Your eyes follow like a spotlight, two eyes like the sun.
What is up, Wisconsin sports fans? You are listening to Buck Life. I think we might just keep this name, Buck Life, the Wisconsin sports fan podcast made by hardcore Wisconsin sports fans for you, hardcore Wisconsin sports fans. I'm Jake. With me, as always, is Chuck, and we're going to get right into it. Might be a quick little podcast here, but we've got a couple things to talk about. Number one, we got to lead off with Bucks because obviously we're a bit biased there. I think you're okay with that, yeah?
Yeah, obviously. And I think if we 4 weeks ago we changed the name, but we didn't come up with anything better.
Yeah.
So, Buck is kind of multi-meaning. You got the Milwaukee Bucks. A lot of people hunt in Wisconsin. I don't. I have no interest in it, but it's Wisconsin themed.
So we're gonna stick with the name, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. But let's talk Bucks right away. The big news, obviously, since the last time we recorded, is that Jabari Parker is officially gone. The Jabari Parker era has ended for the Milwaukee Bucks as he signs a 2-year deal with the Chicago Bulls, the second year being non-guaranteed. $20 million in the first year, $20 million in the second year if Chicago picks up that option. Your initial thoughts on just, I guess, the Jabari era as a whole and how it's come to an end.
I'm glad it's not us giving him $20 million a year, because even though he shows flashes here and there, he's an incredibly frustrating player. I was actually, just yesterday, I went down, I've got some family in the Chicago area, was talking to a couple friends, and they were not too thrilled. Apparently in his first press conference officially, basically he mentioned you don't get paid to play defense, which we know that's Jabari's attitude. He doesn't get paid to play defense.
Well, what was interesting about that whole press conference is, I think we all knew that Jabari... I don't even want to say that I knew that he didn't care about defense. I just thought he was really terrible at it. But the fact that he would come out and say, what he's really thinking, just doesn't seem very smart to me. And in what I've seen from Jabari over the years, he's never really come off as somebody who is great in social situations or in media interviews, etc. But to flat out come out and say in as many words that I don't give a shit about defense, that's pretty ballsy, and I think it pissed off a lot of people in Chicago.
Yeah, it's certainly, I'm just talking to a group of couple family friends, but they were not too thrilled, and they're not maybe as big as sports fans as you and I are, but they're not that far behind. They, one of them, my one family members, they've got a handful of Bulls season tickets.
So that's a pretty big fan. I would
yeah,
say.
well, and the one my one uncle, I think they're second row. They've had him for years, and they just keep moving a little closer. They were third row during Michael Jordan's heyday.
Wow!
They actually got him from a friend of theirs who was a doctor, so the tickets come addressed to doctor and what his name is, even though he's not a doctor. Because when they transferred him, they left the doctor title on there. So yeah, they are big fans, and they're not too thrilled about that. But at the same time, they also didn't seem too concerned because they did have money to burn, and they're in a rebuilding year, so if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
This just seemed like, an opportunity for Chicago that they didn't really have anything to lose.
Yeah, I think, certainly with our two franchises are at different places. We don't really have that money because we've talked about this before, but we keep blowing $10 to $15 million a year on middle-of-the-road players. And at some point, that hits you at the salary cap, whereas Chicago's rebuilding. So I think from a Bulls fan standpoint, if it was me, and I pretty quick after the trade, a friend of mine from high school was texting me about it because he's a big Bulls fan, asking my thoughts. And his reaction was basically he would have rather not done it, but he also understands that, there wasn't anything better available for them. You get a hometown guy. Maybe it works out. Maybe it doesn't. It's not going to kill their franchise. Worst case, it's a single-year deal, and you just blew $20 million, which to the Bulls...
Sure.
It's a lot of money, but to the Bulls, it's really not.
Well, and it's really, in the long run, meaningless when you know you're not going to compete this year. So, again, you try to maybe catch lightning in a bottle there with Jabari. I know there's a lot of vitriol and, anger and, when the news was first announced, because the Bucks had his rights, his restricted free agency rights. They could match that deal. The Bucks then pulled his qualifying offer, which took away their rights, basically so Chicago could negotiate this deal with the non-guarantees and that. Because I believe for restricted free agent, they have to sign at least a 3-year deal. So by the Bucks, they made the gesture of releasing him or taking away that qualifying offer to give them the opportunity to do that deal. But I think what that statement says from the Bucks, it's not like they did it to help Chicago. I don't even think they did it to help Jabari. To me, what that says is, in the long run, with him as a restricted free agent, they're trying to get an asset for him in a sign and trade. They knew at that point Chicago was going to make an offer. They were not going to match it. So to drop their qualifying offer, I think that kind of says, look, we were not bringing him back at any cost. And if you look at the way things transpired at the end of this past season, in the playoffs, where Jabari, in my eyes, blatantly tanked games 1 and 2 right in front of us, I think I understand where the Bucks are coming from. Like, it's hard to bring a guy like that back into a locker room if you have so many of these guys that saw him quit, and I'm sure we're not happy about that at the time too.
Yeah, it didn't seem that, and I'm glad that they didn't seem to want to bring him back. It seemed like maybe they had some talk about a contract, but the sides were nowhere near where they were, and that's fine. I do wish we would have gotten some asset for it, but we weren't going to match. I don't know what Chicago, if we had kept the offer on the table, what a 3-year deal would have looked like from them. If it would have been, 3 years, 45, it probably wouldn't have been $20 million per year at a 3-year contract, because you have to factor in the risk of re-injury. But it still would have been an offer. I'm glad we wouldn't have matched it. So even though I wish we would have got an asset, I think whether they were helping out, there's no way they were helping out Chicago, but maybe they were doing a solid to Jabari, or even just sending the message to players that, hey, we're not going to screw you over, because free agents do care to a certain
extent.
Sure, and they talk
amongst each other.
That a team treats you well. You see that with the Packers do that some years, where they'll release a veteran player early in the offseason so they have a chance to catch on with another team, rather than forcing them through your training camp knowing all along you're going to release them anyways. And it doesn't hurt to look good in the eye of the players, because those guys are all, even though they're competitive, a lot of them are BFFs off the court, and they're just out, going to clubs and playing hoops in the off season together and whatever. So initially my reaction was, we shouldn't have done that under any circumstance. At least try to get something in return. But
second round pick, yeah.
Exactly. But if the idea of the franchise was they had moved on, they weren't going to match no matter what, it's just time to move on. Which, if that is why, then good for them realizing that he wasn't the right fit and that it was time to move on, because that's at least a positive to me.
Well, I get a lot of people angry about the way everything went down, and to have the number 2 overall pick in a year when you won a franchise low, I think it was 15 games, to, at the end of the day, 4 years later, you got nothing for that guy. I get the anger, but I don't think you can be angry about this situation in a vacuum. Like, you can be angry about the entire 4-year period there, and maybe not cutting your losses earlier and getting something for him. I mean, there was a report that a few years ago the Celtics were offering, they had gotten the 3rd overall pick in one of their Brooklyn picks, and they were dangling that, trying to get Jabari or Middleton, and that could have been Jaylen Brown, which, if you add Jaylen Brown to this Bucks core, my God. So yeah, sure, be mad about that, but I don't think at this point, you saw that there was no value to Jabari around the league. There was one team, his hometown team, that had money, that wasn't worried about this year, or probably even next year, about adding cap or taking away from their cap space. So that's just the way that it is. And I actually put a video up on Twitter, Facebook. You can, if you look at the Buck Life Twitter page, at Buck Life Podcast, you can see the video that I kind of go over the reasons of why you shouldn't be angry about this at this point in time about how it happened. So, yes, be angry that they didn't get something for him, something significant for him. But I think just by the way, as I said earlier, the way everything transpired, there's just zero chance he was coming back next year. And take it from me, like, I've been a Jabari, I guess, pessimist, or some people have called me a hater just because from the get-go, early into that tank season, I knew he was being projected as one of the top guys, and I just was not interested in him. I didn't like his game at Duke. When he got benched in the NCAA tournament by Coach K against Mercer in a game that Duke lost in the first round, that spoke volumes to me about, I guess, just kind of reaffirming why I wasn't a fan of him as a prospect. But even so, I wouldn't have been upset had they decided to match this deal, and they could have done a few moves here and there to get under the luxury tax threshold. But just because my big goal is to don't take away from our cap space 3 years or 2 years from now, I should say, when almost everybody comes off the cap. So again, that would have been 2 years that the Bucks would have had him on the hook. But at the same token, that was never going to happen. He was never coming back to Milwaukee on that same deal he got with Chicago. So guys out there, girls out there, don't be mad that we didn't match this deal, because this deal was a deal that was only going to happen with Chicago and not us.
Yeah, and we don't have to deal with the frustration. He's been a frustrating player because he shows the flashes, he disappears for long games, and my biggest regret in the Jabari situation is not taking up, if the Boston trade was legitimately on the table, that's when we should have moved on, but the organization was still high on him for whatever reason.
And that was during Hammond's era.
Yeah.
I talked about that in the video, too. I think Hammond probably had too much pride with the guy. Like, that was his first big move or big pick. When the new owners came in, and, I think deep down they're like, no, he can still pan out. So it's got to be hard to swallow your ego in that situation.
Yeah, and it's a shame he did, because by that point we already had Giannis. We saw Giannis was blossoming. You didn't have to have Jabari be the alpha male on the team, because Giannis was going to be the better player almost certainly. So you could have just cut your losses. Overall, looking back on the draft, picking Jabari, it's hard to argue that, yes, Embiid probably would have been a better pick in hindsight, but that entire draft has just kind of went from being potentially some of the biggest superstars in a draft since, some people were saying it's the best draft at the top since 2003, and it's been nothing but injuries for most of those guys at the top.
Oh, sure.
So overall, it's disappointing that you get the worst record, you only get the number 2 pick, and then that player doesn't pan out and you get nothing in return for him. So overall, a disappointing situation, but at many of the steps along the way, I don't know that there was anything you could realistically do differently.
Sure, and as big as a Jabari skeptic as I've been, I don't hold it against the Bucks for not drafting Embiid, because he got injured a week before the draft, and he had already had injury concerns prior to that. So there was teams that were like, I wouldn't touch him with a top 5 pick. He's a 7-foot center with back problems, with knee problems.
And the foot problem.
And foot problems.
But the foot problem was the big one. The back and the foot were the big ones to me, because we've seen so many big guys with those foot injuries that they just never recuperate. That's what caused Yao Ming to retire. Not Greg Oden. He had the micro fractures in his knees. He was just Mr. Glass. He was basically Mr. Glass from
Mr. Glass.
There's a new movie, Mr. Glass, coming out. Yes, I was thinking of the original Unbreakable, but yes, he is that guy. So
and at that time there was like number 1 and 2 was Wiggins and Jabari, or Jabari and Wiggins, depending on how you ranked them. So you can't fault the Bucks there.
No,
that was it. When Embiid got hurt, it was looking like he may have been the number 1 pick before that injury. But after that point, no team that needs a franchise changer is going to invest that. It was a gamble for Philly to take him at 3 with, at the time, was thought of like Dante Exum was another guy that maybe was in consideration.
He's just been injured as well. It's a shame for the NBA that amount of talent has just been injured since that draft, because the league, you need that regular infusion of new young talent into the league as a whole, just for the product. And it's unfortunate for the Bucks.
Well, more times
I'm
than
sad,
not,
I'm sad more than angry about the whole way it panned out for the last 4 years.
And more times than not, when you look at like strong draft classes, allegedly, like I feel that it seems like those draft classes never pan out or never live up to the hype, and then the ones that are supposed to be weak, all of a sudden, like look at Giannis's draft class. That was kind of a weak draft class, but you get Giannis at pick number 15 in a draft class that was perceived as having not much upside. So again, sometimes it just takes a little bit of luck.
Well, now he's going to be in the MVP discussion basically every season from here until late in his career. I don't know if he'll ever win one, because it's really hard to win one, because you'll have, somewhat Harden will have a great season, and Westbrook will average a triple-double and whatever. But I think he'd probably win one before his career's over. I have a feeling.
If I was forced to make a bet, I would say, for the next 10 years, yes, I would say I think Giannis is going to win an MVP award.
Yeah, I think if we put that time period, 10 years, I think he can win one.
Maybe not here.
That's a discussion for another sad day.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't think he's leaving.
He says all the right things. I don't think he will, but certainly if we can't put talent around him, I wouldn't fault him for leaving down the road, because, I understand the allure of winning a championship, but he does certainly seem to want to win it on his own terms, which is with his team where he is the guy, not pairing up with 2 or 3 other superstars on a basically Harlem Globetrotters team. So we'll see what happens there. But hopefully he wins one. I mean, even if he doesn't win one, he's going to get some votes. Every year he'll make first team, second team NBA. He'll make the All-Star game. That's a hell of a pick at 15.
It would be cool, if the latest trend's been the super teams. Wouldn't it be cool if Giannis and maybe Kawhi Leonard, who just got traded to Toronto, maybe the new trend is loyalty? Wouldn't that be funny? If Kawhi resigns and then, Paul George, who everybody said was going to the Lakers, he resigned in Oklahoma City. And it would just be funny to me to see, the Lakers, who their fans will tell you last year, oh, yeah, Paul George, we're not going to trade for him because he's going to come here. Why trade for him when you can get him for free? Well, guess what? He didn't come. That'd be awesome to see, everybody's saying it now, oh, Kawhi Leonard, give it a year, he'll be in L.A. Okay, well, we'll see. Maybe Toronto gets to the finals and he loves it there.
Yeah, well, and that was a weird trade, because I think Toronto had to do something. Their team was what it was. They were, and a very good treadmill team. The number 1 seed. They made conference championships, but they couldn't get over the hurdle and make it to the finals. And even though LeBron's gone, and that's been their roadblock every year, Boston, in theory, is going to be healthy and better. So I don't know how they would get past Boston. So they had to do something to try to mix it up. But I don't, with Kawhi, who knows what the injury situation is. San Antonio obviously didn't think it was that bad. Kawhi was playing it out, bigger than it was. But he certainly seemed to quit on his team. And you worry what that might be in Toronto, especially a team that, if things go wrong, is he going to quit on them too?
Yeah, I still see
But at the same time, they had to do something, and he's an excellent player.
And I look at DeMar DeRozan and the contract that he signed. He signed, I think, for about $28 million a year, and he's on the books for the next 4 seasons. So just by virtue of getting out of that contract, I don't think that's a good deal. So even if Kawhi walks, it's not ideal for them, but maybe it's you can kickstart a rebuild. All that you really have left to move on from is Kyle Lowry, and I'm sure you could find a taker for him somewhere. And now all your big money's off the books within 2 years, and you can do what you have to do in the NBA now, which is tank. Usually for a couple seasons. I think the Bucks kind of got screwed by only doing the 1 year, but what can you do? Let's talk about the Bucks and the rest of the way that this thing's being constructed here. They've seemed to be embracing modern basketball, which is such a breath of fresh air, versus Jason Kidd's dinosaur, throw it into the post, or long 2, Scott Skiles type offense. So, I mean, the moves they're making, Brook Lopez, Ersan Ilyasova, even, they picked up this guy, Connaughton from the Blazers. It seems like their plan is to get as much spacing as possible around Giannis, which is funny because it would seem like the obvious plan, but apparently not to Jason Kidd.
Yeah, it's funny because that was always, even going back to when we had Andrew Bogut, and he was playing at a crazy level before his arm. I wanted, let's get 4 3-point shooters around him, and Bogut in the middle, playing elite defense, getting the occasional alley-oop, the slam dunks, whatever, the rebounds. And that was kind of before the big trend was big 3-point shooters. But it seemed so obvious back then, and now it's smacking everyone in the face that that's the right way to go in the NBA. So it certainly seems like they're doing that, and I don't know if Giannis is going to improve his 3-point shooting at all, but the two best ways to score in the NBA today are at the hoop or behind the 3-point line. The mid-range and long twos, that game is, when Jordan was doing the turnaround fadeaway jump shots, that was fine, but that's not the league anymore. So it certainly seems we're constructing a better team, but I feel like I've felt this before. When we signed, what was it, 2 years ago, we signed Dellavedova and Teletovic, and it was like, hey, these players are at least good fits for our team. And
not so much.
Yeah, I mean, Teletovic did he officially retire? I don't think he's officially retired, but he's basically got some serious medical issues, and no fault of his. That you got to take care of your health first and foremost, and something like that, it's not like you can predict it. It's not like he was out riding a motorcycle and crashed and being reckless or anything. He's got some serious health issues. Wish him the best in that regard. Maybe if he didn't have that health issues, maybe we're singing a different song about the Teletovic years as a Milwaukee Buck.
The Teletovic era.
The Teletovic era. Dellavedova is just, I don't know. Like, he's good when he's in Cleveland and paired with LeBron, and terrible any other time. Like, I
think, like, Dellavedova, to me, okay, he's an NBA player, but he's, like, ideally your third point guard that, like, okay, this guy's killing you on the perimeter, and you can put him in, and he's just going to annoy the fuck out of him and play good defense. Like, and if you can have him on a $3 million a year, $2 million a year salary, NBA veteran type deal, yeah, you want that guy on your team, but $9 million a year,
yeah,
not too keen on that.
Yeah, so that's my only concern there, is that it seems we're signing players that'll fit better and be a better constructed roster. But I felt this a couple years ago when we did the Delly and Telly deal, and so I hope this time it works out better and it feels better. And Lopez is a 1-year deal. Ersan was a short deal. So either way, it's not going to kill us because we didn't sign any of these guys to 4-year deals for big money. So if it works, great. If not, we're moving on in a year or two anyways. So
one thing that's being overlooked too is, and I read I forget who the national writer was, but he put out a great story about it, how one of the most under the radar moves of the entire offseason was the Bucks upgrading their coaching from Jason Kidd to Mike Budenholzer. When I think he said, you're going from arguably one of the top 3 worst coaches in the league to one of the top 3rd coaches in the league. That not only from an X's and O's standpoint, but just someone that understands the modern game. I can't wait to see this Bucks team play just based off of when Atlanta was good, when they had the guy or the horses to run. They were all about ball movement. They were all about spacing.
Well, they got the number 1 seed under him, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah,
they
that's
won
right. I thought
60
that was
games,
one of his years. Yeah,
with Horford and Kyle Korver, DeMar Carroll.
I feel like we have more talent than the team they had.
Well,
just by Giannis alone, we have a superstar. The surrounding cast, they probably had a better overall surrounding cast, but
in the NBA, it seems like the best player on the floor is typically going to give you the advantage more so than the guys that are coming off the bench or supplementing those guys. But so Bucks offseason continues. We'll see. Maybe there's another move to be made. The Middleton's contract status is up in the air. Bledsoe's a free agent after this year. It won't shock me if there's another move that the Bucks make.
I think you could either make it now or you can make it at the trade deadline, depending how the first half of the season pans out. I think a lot of it depends on what's being offered. A trade takes 2 teams to work out. One of the reasons beyond, I'm very excited to see the X's and O's and all that with the coach, because our defense and offense were both so stagnant the last couple of years.
And that's being nice.
They were just, it was straight out of the 80s or 90s, and that's what Jason Kidd played, so maybe that impacted it so much. He wasn't able to adapt with the game. He wasn't, Steve Kerr played in that same era, but he's had no problem adapting to the new era. And the other big reason looking forward to watching them this year is we can watch them at the Fiserv Forum.
The Fiserv Forum. Doesn't that just roll off your tongue?
Yeah, it was kind of, I said it, I don't know if I said it officially in one of our podcasts, but I know I've mentioned people. They seemed like they were probably the front runners because of the whole a local company with national ties. You know, they're a Fortune
Yeah.
500 company. Coles and Harley are both kind of struggling. You've got, you know, other teams that are already sponsorships with the team. I really thought it was going to be Fiserv or Northwestern Mutual, so I wasn't really surprised by the Fiserv announcement.
Yeah.
That was just earlier this week.
When it
Very
happened,
recent.
it seemed like people were really upset about it. I'm just like, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, they're going to call it the forum, but I do want to go on record. If you call it the 4-1 forum, as some people are saying online, like, you're lame as fuck. Like, that's so stupid.
I have not heard that one yet.
If I ever have a
just
friend...
call it the forum.
If I ever have a friend that's like, hey, I got, you know, tickets to go see the Bucks. You want to go down to the 4-1 forum with me? Like, I'm just going to delete them off my phone, block them. Like, I don't want to be associated with you. Like, that's just fucking lame. Before we move on, we don't talk Brewers, but, like, first event that's going to be happening at the forum, the Killers, the Violent Femmes are opening. I think it's a great move.
You got a local legend in the Violent Femmes.
I'll be there.
You got a pretty big band in the Killers. You know, they just had a new album that came out within the last year, so they're touring that. And I like the Killers. I'm not a huge Killers fan. My wife hates them. For whatever reason, she just hates Brandon Flowers' voice. Like, she doesn't like his solo stuff. She doesn't like the Killers. She doesn't like his voice. Doesn't like him.
I don't know about his voice, but my wife definitely likes Brandon Flowers.
Okay.
But no, I don't. I just saw another thing that it seems like people will be mad about anything, like saying that the Killers weren't a big enough act, and it's like they're one of the biggest bands in the world. I don't think you can be upset with like the level of that type.
They've got some really big shows. I know Metallica's coming to the Bradley Center, and I'm not a huge Metallica fan, but that's a huge show. The Foo Fighters.
Maroon 5.
I wonder, is the Foo Fighters when they're coming? Is that one of the shows where the Struts are opening up for them? Because I know the Struts are going on tour with Foo Fighters.
If that's the case, I might have to go to that one.
Yeah, I when I heard that, I was like, I like the Foo Fighters. They have some good songs, but they also have a lot of stuff I don't care for. But I'd go see the Struts again because we saw them down in Chicago at Lincoln Hall, you know, venue of 500 people before they were doing a stadium tour with Foo Fighters.
Great British rock band, you guys. If you want a good music recommendation, the Struts.
It's funny. There was an interview with I have satellite radio. We're getting kind of off sports. We're talking music, but Dave Grohl was interviewed on Sirius Alt Nation. They played a little clip of it, and he said that the Struts were the best band that's ever opened up for them. And I was like, you're talking. Dave Grohl is basically a god in the rock world. You know, like I said,
all-timer.
I like a lot of Foo Fighters, but they're not, you know, a lot of their stuff I'm like, I could take it or leave it. But I won't ever deny that he's one of the biggest rock stars of all time just because he's so talented. You know, that he can play every instrument, he can sing, he can do it all. And it was kind of high praise, and I was like, well, that's kind of insulting to the other bands that have opened up for you over the last 20 years. But
there must be internet outrage over this.
Yeah, so there's some big shows coming. They've got they're doing a Christmas market there, a German-style Christmas market in November and December. My wife's excited for that. She loves that sort of thing. So I'm pretty excited about the arena overall.
Yeah.
I've driven by it. It's been a few weeks, but every time I drive by it, it's so beautiful in person, and can't wait till the Bradley Center's just gone because it's an eyesore next to that new arena.
And it's just nightmares.
Yeah. So
mostly bad times.
Looking forward this season, even though I don't expect them to compete for a championship this year, you've got, you know, where will Giannis come in and improve? You know, can he bring himself to MVP level this year? I certainly expect him to make the All-Star game, barring an injury. How much can a new coach improve them? Will they get a little bump from having a new arena? Because you expect there'll be bigger home crowds, which doesn't hurt anything because...
Sure, and it's going to be louder in there.
Right, despite being an okay team the last couple seasons, making the playoffs, you know, all that, the crowds still weren't necessarily there, especially on, you know, your Tuesday nights in January where it's a little cold outside, and it was like a library inside the Bradley Center. So I don't expect that to happen as much, and it's a better arena for sound and basketball. You're going to get better sight lines, so you expect better crowds. So, yeah, looking forward to a lot of reasons to get there. I don't think I'll go to opening night, but I'll be at game 2 or 3.
Sweet.
I'm not going to shell out the kind of cash required to go to that first one.
I'll meet you there. Let's talk a little Brewers here. The Brewers made a couple deals in the last week as we record here. They deal for another stud reliever in Joakim Soria, I believe is how you pronounce it. And they get a bat in Mike Moustakas coming from the Kansas City Royals in a really, really interesting series of events here. So you acquire Moustakas, and he's a third baseman, so they move Travis Shaw off of third to second. Now, my initial thoughts on this was it kind of bothers me a little bit, and I'm very skeptical of this move. Only because this is typically something that you experiment with in spring training, and you're in the middle of a pennant race, you're a couple games behind the NL Central leader, and now you are going to weaken yourself defensively at two positions. Now, I get the need for a bat, but Moustakas is not having a great year at the plate. The hope is that he can have a better second half, but it also seems like they're very much going all in on the home run, which I'm not a fan of that myself, especially it doesn't seem to really play in the playoffs when you're facing the elite pitchers and you're getting 2-run games, 3-run games. So I don't know. I'm hopeful, but definitely skeptical as far as Moustakas goes.
Well, for me, the thing is that we've gotten absolutely nothing out of second base position this year. We had... So I think offensively I'm 100% okay with it. I'm fine with what we gave up. Giving up a couple, borderline major league players. Are they quad A players? Are they, bench players in the major leagues? So I'm fine with that. It remains to be seen how Shaw can be at second base because he's 6'4". He has basically no range. He did make a good catch. He's only played there one game. He did make a good over-the-shoulder catch in the center field yesterday. And if he's just a platoon player now, they don't play him against lefties, it could be okay. And he'll play third base when Moose needs a day off or whatever. So I'm kind of in wait-and-see mode, but I think defensively it's a potential disaster waiting to happen.
Well, and I think about, maybe they're trying to go about this lineup thing the way that they've kind of gone about their pitching staff, which is, move guys around, use a lot of different guys in a lot of different spots. But as far as a lineup is concerned in baseball, it seems to me that getting into a rhythm is very, very important. And one of the reasons I think that they haven't got a lot of production out of second base is because you have 9 guys that have played there this year. So I wonder what Jonathan Villar has done to Craig Counsell. To me, I thought he's looked a little bit better this year, especially offensively. And perhaps he'd be better offensively if he was playing, 4 out of 5 games at second base and getting into a rhythm rather than, every, third day you're going to play and maybe it'll be, second base or, maybe we're going to have Perez over there. These guys are creatures of habit, and that's one of my criticisms of Counsell is he's kind of Jason Kidd with the lineups, and it's keep changing things, keep moving guys around, and maybe stick with something for a little bit, see if that works.
Yeah, it's certainly hard to say. I'm of the opinion that baseball manager is one of the least important positions in all of sports because I don't know that it makes much of a difference. That said, with lineups, that is probably the one place where you can have impact because you want guys on base for your big hitters. You want, if you want to protect your best hitters and all that. There is some logic to designing the lineup. And some of that's been injuries. We've had a string of injuries for those middle of the infielder guys. They'll bring someone up, they get injured. But yeah, it'll be interesting because Shaw his splits are not good. So hopefully he's a platoon guy at most. Give Moose a day off at third, platoon when there's right-handed pitchers at second. That's fine. But you're right. I don't know. It seems like Jonathan Villar didn't. He's had some big pinch hits, but he hasn't gotten regular playing time, and you wonder what could be. It does seem that they were playing Shaw at second in practice for a while. Apparently, going for the possibility of maybe third base is where they had to get their upgrade for offense. So, I think pitching-wise, a lot of people are calling for another starter, and certainly if we can get a starter and the price isn't too high, I don't want to give up any of our top prospects, and it seems from the rumors that David Stearns doesn't want to give up our top 10 guys. They're basically untouchable, which is good because even though we've got the second best record in the NL. Coming in today, we were half a game out of the Cubs. We're a game out now because we lost. The Cubs are winning, so we're probably going to be a game and a half out. But second best record in the NL. This is right where you want to be 110 games into. I think we're about 110 games into the season. I'd have to look. Probably not quite 100. Maybe 105 or so, 107. But it's right where you want to be. So I won't fault them if they make a go for it now move because you've got as good a chance as anyone right now. You should, barring a total collapse, you're going to at least get that wild card spot. The Cubs might be hard to catch because they are a very good team. I mean, when you can spend that amount of money on your payroll, you better be a good team. So I wouldn't be opposed to getting a starting pitcher, but we also have such an elite bullpen. I don't know that it's as big a need as some people seem to think it is.
Well, a lot of people were shocked that they traded for another bullpen arm, and Soria is a proven closer. I think they said he has like the 8th most saves of all active players right now. So I love that move. I just think in general relievers are so much cheaper to acquire than starting pitching. And it really seems like they're going all in on this plan of like have a solid set of starting pitchers that you need 5 innings from these guys. And then once you get, if you can get into 5 innings with a lead, God, it's lights out at this point. So adding another guy that you can say you're comfortable as a closer, especially because Knebel's been a little bit shaky, so now you can insert him into that closer's role if need be and probably not miss a beat. So I love that idea. I do think they're going to have to get a starting pitcher at some point, not because their starting pitching has been so bad, but just because of attrition. That more and more of these starters are going down. It looks like Davies is going to miss another month. I don't think Jimmy Nelson is coming back this season, as great as that would be to have. And who knows if he's ever the same again. So they've been linked to some names. Matt Harvey is the one that I've been hearing the most lately, which would make sense because I don't think he would be super, super expensive to acquire. And I think Stearns has gone on record as saying if they were going to get a starting pitcher, it would be a frontline guy and not just, a depth kind of end of the rotation guy. And that makes total sense too, because if you're going to make a playoff run, you got to have an ace usually. So if an ace becomes available and you feel like you can get in there and get him, I would love it. Zach DeGrom's been mentioned. Who's the other guy? Noah Syndergaard's the other one that is potentially available, although it wouldn't shock me if New York decides to keep those guys around. But if you can get one of those two, hey, I'm all for it. Otherwise, stick with what you have. Maybe get yet another great reliever and see if you can just kind of go with what's been working.
Yeah, and I think as the season winds down, when you get into the playoffs, you often see it where the starters will skip a day of rest. Your top guys will pitch on 3 days rest, 4 days rest. We saw it. The all-time of that is obviously Sabathia. His year with the Brewers was just a tank. But I think you could also see that with the relievers where come playoff time, we only need 4 innings out of our starter because we can run those relievers out there every single day because you get more days off in the playoffs. You only have a little bit left in the season, so just give it your all, and then you can get the whole off season off. So I wouldn't be surprised with our bullpen if we end up in a situation where you're in the playoffs, you have a 1-0 lead, and the starter starts struggling a little bit, or you have a 2-0 lead, whatever it is, just go straight to the bullpen and roll those guys out there. So having the bullpen we have, which is 2 middle reliever all-stars from the same team, that's unheard of. And then you have other guys who are proven, between... you
have Knebel's a former All-Star. Soria's a former All-Star a couple times.
Right, and even though Knebel's been struggling and looked shaky at times, he's still gotten the job done more often than not. So I'd still feel confident with those 4 guys shutting it down more often than not. So hopefully we get another starter, and it seemed like Matt Harvey was the most likely and the best fit, but the rumors are that they want assets back based on his stats this year, whereas teams looking to trade for him want to trade based on his big picture entire career, which I get that's where you're going to be at for a starting point, but you're going to have to meet somewhere in the middle.
Well, and you're running out of time here. The deadline's Tuesday, so someone's going to budge.
Yeah, we have roughly 36 hours left on the deadline from right now, so a little more than that, but someone's going to budge, and I don't know who that is, but it would be nice to get something like a Matt Harvey. It's a shame San Francisco, they refused to rebuild. We just beat them, but they should be looking to shop someone like a Baumgartner, and they should be shopping some of their pieces. And there's not as many sellers as there should be because some of these teams are just stubborn. And but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the next 2 days.
Should be some fireworks.
It'd be nice to get something more. And if it's a front of the rotation guy, all bets are off for the rest of the season because they are still, even with losing today, and the Cubs are, let's see, I think they're still up 5-2. Yeah, 5-2 going to the 7th inning. So seems likely they're going to win because it's just what they do. So it'll be a game and a half out with 50 games to go, 55.
I'll take it.
Real
quick before we head out, I just want to cover one quick thing with the Packers. Their training camp started this week, and there's plenty to be talked about. Some position battles. That's always a part of training camp. But it's one glaring thing that sticks out to me. And they brought in a new defensive coordinator, Mike Pettin, who has a proven track record of building great defenses. But I look at one of their biggest weaknesses over the last couple of years has been pass rush, and it's a little bit scary to me. They talk about the definition of insanity, and that's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, and that's the way I'm looking at it with their edge rushers. So you're depending on Clay Matthews and Nick Perry to provide pass rush this year, and in those two guys, it's a lot of money. And it's a lot of injuries. So the ratio there of production versus money spent doesn't seem like a good one. I'm the most nervous about that of anything with this Packers team going forward this year. Now they talk about that Pettin especially, he likes to generate pass rush from his front guys. We'll see. Maybe they have, and they do have more depth, I think, in their defensive line more so than their edge rushers, but am I wrong? Am I crazy for being nervous about this?
No, I don't think we're wrong to be crazy or nervous about that. I mean, Clay, for 5 years now, he misses a couple games with a nagging hamstring injury, misses half a game with a groin pull. I think we can expect more of the same there. Perry always seems to have these freak injuries, broken bones, and that's one of those things that I'll never fault the guy for getting a broken bone. You can stretch your muscles. You can do some stuff to help prevent those pulls. But at the same time, you can't completely... if you tear your ACL, sometimes it's just going to happen. You look at when Jordy tore his ACL. Untouched, just came down, landed on the ball, and his ACL tore. No amount of training or anything could prevent something like that. Broken bones, same thing. Sometimes your bones just break. You have multiple 300-pound guys just crushing into each other.
Yeah, that might do it.
And it happens. So I hope... And they had borderline elite-level production from their defensive line. You have some great guys up there. You have Mike Daniels, obviously. Everyone knows what he can do. And one of my sleepers coming into camp this year is Montravius Adams. He might have a big year. Supposedly he's looking good in camp so far. He kind of spent a lot of time injured, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it overall. Packers season's always exciting. We've got, I think next weekend, is it the first weekend in August? I think is the family night. That's kind of the first time you don't really see much since it's just kind of going out there glorified practice, but it's still nice when that comes on TV. I don't think other teams don't get something like that on their regular TV where they broadcast basically a glorified practice on the field. You don't see the Bears doing that at Soldier Field. It's one of the special things the Packers do.
Yeah.
And then preseason games will be right around the corner because what is it? Probably, I haven't looked, but it's got to be early August here for the first preseason game.
Yeah, typically, I mean, they have the Hall of Fame game, and then I don't think Green Bay's in the Hall of Fame game, but it's the next week after that. It's the rest of the...
No, and we were last year when Favre was going into the Hall of Fame, and boy, they canceled it because the field was such a disaster.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so August 9th is the first preseason game against Tennessee. And that's at Lambeau. We play our first 2 games at home and then our last 2 preseason games on the road. So
Sweet.
That is right around the corner. That's
by the next podcast, we'll probably be covering the Packers camp a lot more.
Definitely, because that's the next training. The first preseason game is 11 days from now. So we should record before that, but there'll be a lot more. We'll start getting a feel for some of these position battles. Right now, it started Thursday, so they've had 4 practices. We don't have the slightest clue how it's shaken out at, there's cornerback battles. You got a couple rookies in there. You got Tremont Williams.
Quarterback?
You got Tremont Williams back. Yeah, you got the backup quarterback battle between Kaiser and Hundley. I almost forgot his name because he was so terrible. I want to wipe him from my memory.
Give him a chance.
I'm willing to give anyone a chance. The problem is that he always, like last year in the preseason, he looked so good. We were talking about, hey, can we trade him for a future pick? And then he got into actual games. He was like a deer in a headlight.
Yeah.
And it was just... And I think some of that was on the coaching staff for not playing to his strengths, not running him out more, moving the pocket, just trying to have him be Aaron Rodgers when he's not Aaron Rodgers. So... you have arguably the 2 worst quarterbacks in the league last year in Kaiser and Hundley battling for the backup spot to the greatest quarterback in the league.
It all evens out.
I mean, if in an ideal world, Rodgers is healthy. We only see those guys when we're up 55-0 against the Bears because the Bears still suck. But yeah, I'm not quite at the point. I'm excited that training camp started. But it's too early for me to be fully invested in the Packers. Plus, the Brewers doing what they're doing.
It's a little pennant race going on.
Yeah, that's keeping me distracted. I think I'd be more invested in the preseason and the training camp if the Brewers weren't doing well. I was almost really down on the Brewers going into the All-Star break. They had lost they had 7 in a row, or
it wasn't ideal.
It wasn't good. But with all that done, they came out. They've bounced back a bit here. I wish they would have swept the Giants, but taking 3 out of 4 on the road in San Francisco, you can't be too upset with the ultimate result there. And they're only going to be a game and a half out of the Cubs, second best record in the NL. I have no major complaints about where the Brewers are right now. And especially if they can make one more, I feel like we're one piece away from really, because I don't know that the Cubs really, their team is kind of what they are right now. I don't know that they're going to do anything more. They're kind of
they picked up Cole Hamels, who's had a terrible year, and they're thinking he's going to have some resurgence here,
and maybe he will, but who knows?
Hopefully, by the time we record the next podcast, we have a big Brewers trade to talk about. We'll definitely have some Packers training camp to talk about. Maybe it's a Bucks big trade. Who knows?
Yeah. Anything's in play. I don't know what the Bucks are going to do. They've got a very weird roster right now, and I feel like they should make another trade, but I don't know what the right fit is for where we have pieces that a team's going to want to trade for pieces we want. Their roster is just so weirdly constructed. I don't know where they make that trade, but definitely excited for the arena is coming soon. Packers are coming soon. The Brewers are in a playoff race. Before we know it, Badgers football will be starting because they'll start a week before the NFL. So, and they should be a really good team. We haven't. There's not really much to talk about there. They don't have training camp and position battles, kind of like what we have in the NFL, but. This is an exciting time to be a Wisconsin sports fan, so I'm already looking forward to the next time we sit down and do this together.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be a listener to this podcast as well. So we appreciate you guys as always. Hopefully in the next week or two we'll have another episode for you guys. Until then, this has been the Buck Life Podcast. We're out.